Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alyssa and today's video is going to be all about my breastfeeding journey. I'm currently breastfeeding my 2-year-old little girl, Avy, and she breastfeeds all day long. She's currently night weaned. We night weaned her around 18 months, and what that means is basically I stopped feeding her through the night. So that happened around 18 months, but she does breastfeed all day long on demand still, and she just turned 2 about a month ago. So it's been a long 2 years, and since it's World Breastfeeding Week, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of film our breastfeeding journey since, you know, it's still going on and she's 2 years old. So I had Avy naturally at a birth center, and breastfeeding did not come naturally, to say the least. I remember before I had her, during pregnancy, I knew I was going to have her naturally, so a lot of my research involved natural births, and I didn't really research breastfeeding as much as I think I should have. I did research though, and there were a ton of videos that I watched having to do with positioning and latching, and I feel like if I would have watched more videos on women's experiences, I think I would have been a little more prepared. But from the start, I knew I wanted to breastfeed, and I knew it was something that wasn't going to come super easy, that I was going to have to work for it, but I knew that I wanted to do it. So as soon as she was born, I tried to put her to my boob, and I just remember I was so exhausted. She was so heavy and my boobs were so huge, and I remember I just tried and tried to put her to my boob, hold up my boob, and hold her, and it was just exhausting, and I was tired and I didn't want to do it, and she wasn't latching, she wasn't able to get a good latch. And I had a midwife, an assistant midwife, I had my doula and my birth photographer, and both my doula and my birth photographer have breastfed their children, and so they were trying to help me kind of figure it out. And Avy, my daughter, she would kind of try to suck, and it was like she would get frustrated, and so she would start crying. And I remember my assistant midwife came to me and was like, you know, if she's not eating from your breast, you're really gonna have to like express and give it to her a different way. And I remember just being so frustrated with that and just being like, give me a chance to do this, like, you know, like we need a little more time. Thankfully, when you give birth at a birth center like I did, you can go home pretty early, and so we didn't spend the night there. We spent around 6 hours there, and then we were able to go home. So once we got home and I was in the comfort of my own home, in my own bed, I decided to try a lay down feed. So I didn't have to carry her, I didn't have to hold my boob up. I laid down on my side and I popped my boob in her mouth, and that worked out beautifully, and she was able to eat, I was able to relax, and I pretty much still breastfeed her in that same way. Of course there are other positions, but that's still one of the positions we currently to this day still use, and probably my favorite position. And we co-slept till 18 months, and that's how I fed her all night long for the first 18 months of her life. So if you're not familiar with that breastfeeding position, definitely look it up on how to do it correctly. There are certain ways that you want to do it to make sure that their airflow isn't blocked and all of that. So there are tons of videos on YouTube about that, so definitely look that up. That was the first position that we successfully used and successfully did well. So that made me really happy. But of course, there were times where I wanted to sit up on the couch or like, you know, be with my family. They were coming to visit us, and I would have to breastfeed her, and so I obviously learned other positions. But in those first few hours and even that first day when I was just so exhausted and so tired, that wasn't the best position. So yeah, now moving on to my first mistake breastfeeding, and that was me using the Haka. If you haven't heard of the Haka, it is this little suctioned milk cup thing that collects milk. So when you start breastfeeding and you put baby to your boob and they start eating on one boob, especially in those first few months, your other boob will start to leak quite a bit. And as a mom who's trying to collect milk, you want every drop, like you want every single drop to use for your baby. So in the very beginning when I would breastfeed her on one side, I would put the Haka on the other side, and I thought it was so awesome, and I didn't think twice about it. I was collecting so much milk. I had already collected, you know, I don't even know how many ounces, maybe 20-30 ounces just from that Haka, and I didn't have to pump, and I was just so excited about it until I realized it was giving me oversupply. And when you hear the word oversupply, you think, well, isn't that a good thing? Like, you know, most people aren't producing enough, and why wouldn't you want oversupply? Well, the reason you don't want oversupply is because it creates acid reflux like symptoms for your baby, and that's what I thought Avy had. I thought she had acid reflux for a little while because she would throw up all of her food. She would poop a lot. She was starting to have like greenish poops instead of the normal yellow breastfed poop, and it was kind of freaking me out. And I remember she would, whenever I would put her to my boob, first of all, I was so engorged and they weren't going down because I had oversupply, that my breasts and my nipples hurt so bad. It was just like these two huge rocks hanging on my chest, and it was just the worst. I remember just being so uncomfortable and thinking it was completely normal, which in the beginning it is normal for your boobs to be like that for a certain amount of time, but for me it lasted way longer than it should have because I had so much oversupply. Just that pain and that engorgement when she would go to latch would first of all hurt me, but then she couldn't get a good latch because my boobs were so full that she could never get a good latch. And no matter how much I tried to like express before she went on, it was like they were still just too big, too full for her to ever get like a good latch. When she would latch, it would just come out so fast that she would like gag on my milk as she was drinking because it was just coming out so much and so fast. And so all of these problems, and then on top of that, because I was so engorged, because I had so much milk, I was leaking like crazy. And what that created was thrush. Thrush is like the worst thing you could have besides a clogged duct or mastitis when you're breastfeeding. It's basically yeast, and I first noticed it when Avy had a diaper rash. I think she was like maybe a month old. She was not very old at all, and she had a really bad diaper rash, and none of the creams I was using was working. I was just really confused, and I remember I asked my doula, like, what is this? And she kind of told me like it could be thrush, it could be yeast. If, you know, if regular diaper rash creams aren't taking it away, it could be thrush. And so I decided to kind of do my own little research and was looking it up and seeing the symptoms, and one of the symptoms is like your nipples hurt really bad when they eat, and that was definitely happening. It was like when I would put her to my boob, like needles were shooting out of my nipples, like, and this is my first time breastfeeding, so I think this is normal, like, oh, this is just how it's supposed to feel. Turns out that's not how it's supposed to feel. Definitely not normal. That was a symptom. Her rash was a symptom, and there is white all over her tongue. And when I took her to her first like checkup and I asked the doctor, like, is her white tongue normal? It could be thrush, could also be milk residue on her tongue. You have to take a washcloth and try to take off that white stuff on her tongue. If it doesn't come off, then it's thrush. So that was kind of like a weird thing too, because we would do it and it would kind of come off but not really. And so just my motherly instinct told me this is thrush, like I know this is thrush. And so I decided to use the grapefruit seed extract. So I put that in some coconut oil and I would put that on her butt, I would put that on my nipples, I would put that inside of her mouth every single time we nursed. It was a pain in the butt. It really did suck. There definitely probably is an easier way, but I like to lean more towards the natural stuff. And it ended up clearing it out, but it did take some time, and it did take some patience, and it did take work to get it done. I wanted it so bad, and I wanted to breastfeed her so bad that I was willing to do the work. I was willing to get it done. And I also figured out my oversupply. So at first, when I thought it was acid reflux symptoms, I started Googling it, and there was a Facebook group that I found called La Leche League that I got into, and I asked a question in there, and I kind of told the situation of, you know, what was going on, what her symptoms were, and someone commented mentioning oversupply, and at that point I didn't even know the term oversupply or that it caused any sort of problems. So I saw that, and then I looked it up, and I found kellymom.com and she lists a bunch of like breastfeeding stuff, and so she had an article on oversupply, and I start reading that, how you fix oversupply, and it's basically block feeding. It's called block feeding. So you only feed on one boob until it's empty, and you can kind of tell by feeling your boob, it feels empty, and then you switch over to the other side. So before, what I was doing was I was switching her every time she fed. I would switch her. Those were our first struggles and problems with breastfeeding, and I think the other problem I had was I did get a clogged duct, but that was only because I was breastfeeding her at night, and in the middle of the night I would get up and switch boobs and put her on the other boob. And there was one night where I was just so tired that I did not want to do that, and I kept feeding her on the same boob. So when I woke up in the morning, the other boob was just excruciating. It was so full and so red and so hot. And the way I kind of fixed that was I got in the shower, I put it on really hot, and I just massaged my boob. I expressed with my hand. I never pumped because I didn't want to create more oversupply. So I massaged my boob, I hand expressed, I kind of like rubbed lavender on my boobs, lavender essential oils, and some Epsom salt, and I just kind of like relaxed and massaged it out. It hurt like hell to massage that out, it really does, but it ended up working, and I got the clogged duct out, and I never got mastitis or anything like that. After we figured out those first few problems, after that, breastfeeding was pretty easy. I feel from the moms who have to go back to work and have to pump, you know, every single day. To be honest, I hated pumping, so I'm sorry if that's you. This might not be the video for you, but yeah, if you are, you know, planning on staying home or working from home, you can get through breastfeeding. So like I said, I weaned her at 18 months. Previous to that, for 18 full months, she night nursed every 2 hours till she was 18 months. Truly, I don't think I slept more than 3 hours for the first 18 months of her life. Like, I couldn't sleep. I'm not a side sleeper. I sleep on my stomach. And she would wake me up when she wanted to eat. So I was on my stomach, she'd wake me up, I'd get up, I'd feed her. In the beginning, I used to be able to sleep through it. As time went on, I was not able to sleep through it anymore, and I would pretty much be awake the entire time she fed, and then as soon as she'd fall asleep, I tried to fall back asleep. And for me to get comfortable, I'm such a mover, she's a light sleeper, it was just a headache. Night weaning her was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. If you also co-sleep, if you also night nurse, then you know, like, to put them to bed at night, you either also have to go to bed with them at night, or you have to kind of like ninja off the bed and then kind of be scared that they're on the bed by themselves. For us, that solution was to not get a bed frame, and so our bed is on our floor. It still is. We still haven't found a bed frame for it, but that's the reason our bed is on the floor, is because we night nursed for so long and we co-slept for so long that I felt safer knowing that, like, if she fell off the bed, it would be like this much than like an entire, you know, foot or whatever. So yeah, and I'm just a night person. Like, I like to get my stuff done at night. I like to work at night. I like to have the nighttime to just like unwind and clean and read and journal. Like, nighttime is for me. And so when I didn't have that for those 18 months, it was really hard. It was hard. It was hard not having that time, and I was starting to get really frustrated. So when we decided to night wean her, we went with a very gentle method. It was the Dr. J. Gordon method, no cry, co-sleeping method. So we didn't really have any intention of putting her in a crib, but we did night wean her, and it went really smoothly, but she was still waking up. JC was able to put her to bed. He'd go in there, he'd lay down with her, and she'd fall right asleep. Same thing with me. I'd go in there, I'd lay down with her, I'd say it's time for night-night, and she would fall asleep on our bed. So finally, we just decided to try out the crib. So we went to IKEA, we bought the cheapest crib we could find, and we put the crib right next to our bed. The very first night that we put her in there, she slept the entire night. I mean, I'm talking 8 hours. 8 hours. She had never done that before. It was nuts. She just needed her own space. She just needed to be somewhere where we weren't sitting there moving and, you know, adjusting, and now it's just such a breeze. It's so amazing putting her down. I just posted her nighttime routine. If you need to see that, that was definitely something that was so crucial in getting her to sleep through the night too. I think was having that consistent nighttime routine and like what we do, making sure that happens, making sure it happens at the same time every night. So crucial. So doing that, putting her in her own crib, nighttime is so peaceful for me, and I love it. I love it. So yeah, and we're still breastfeeding. I'm still, you know, nursing her multiple times a day. I'm trying to kind of wean to like night and morning feeds, or even like 3 times a day, 4 times a day would be great. She's not quite there yet, and she drinks other milks. She drinks all kinds of nut milks. She loves water, but nursing and it's just her comfort. It's just something that, like, you know, she just wants to be close to me. She wants to feel that love, and I do too, and I love it. You know, I don't mind it, and I could still keep going, but for the amount she does every day, that's what's kind of getting to me. So that's why I kind of want to kind of reel it back to, you know, 2 or 3 times a day would be super good for me, and then we could kind of like work from there. So if I figure out any solutions for that, I'll let you know. For now, I put apple cider vinegar on my nipples, and that'll keep her away for like a good 10 to 15 minutes. After that, she's like whatever, I don't care about that anymore. So that's not really working. I haven't tried the band-aid thing, but she's 2. If I put a band-aid on, she would just take it off. Like, I don't think that would work. And she gets really frustrated with me when I try to like take her off of my boob. Like, I don't see any weaning for her like in the near future. She's just that obsessed with the boob. So I'll keep y'all updated on if we wean her, how we wean her, what's successful for us. If she decides to wean, I mean, I just don't know. So I thought this was a good video to do just because it's World Breastfeeding Week, and I'm super proud of our breastfeeding journey, even though it kind of started off super rocky and crazy up front, but now it's just super easy, and we maybe even do it too much. Yeah, if you have any questions for me, please leave them down below. Give this video a like if it's something that you enjoyed and you want to see more from me. Yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.